We don't just walk away from our calling. We get busy, distracted. We become reasonable because we have a family depending on us. There's bills to pay. There's increasing relational obligations that we must meet. And so we slowly forget who we are and forget the work that God has called us to do. This is not intentional, but it's a slow drift all the same. C.S. Lewis, in his Chronicles of Narnia, The Silver Chair, this is a type of enchantment. And the dangerous thing about enchantments is that it seems reasonable, it seems real, it seems mature in the moment. That we are simply doing what any other reasonable man would do in our situation. But we're forgetting the signs. We're forgetting the work that God has called us to do in our effort to do the right thing, in our effort to maintain some sense of certainty and control. We're forgetting the signs. In the story, Jill was given instructions by Aslan on the mountain of what to do when she got to Narnia. But he also said that on the mountain, the instructions were clear. The signs were clear on the mountain, but once she got into Narnia, things would become less clear, cloudy, heavy. And so she had to commit the signs to her heart. She had to commit them to memory so that when she was in these uncertain spots, she could recall them by heart. And how often maybe we hear a sermon or moment in worship or time of personal reflection where God speaks to us very clearly. In that moment with God, everything seemed clear. We knew what we needed to do. But down the mountain, in the valley, when we're trying to apply those instructions, things now become uncertain. The instruction didn't change, but now we're faced with uncertainty. Will this work? Can I trust in the goodness of God to apply this when I'm faced with this uncertainty? This was the case with Jill and Scrub and Puddlegum when they finally heard the last sign they were waiting for. They were sent on a mission to rescue the Prince of Narnia and were told that they would know the prince by the first person who told them to do something in the name of Aslan. But the prince was under an enchantment, and so he's bound to the silver chair for their protection. But in that so-called bewitching hour, that's actually his moment of sanity. And he cries out for them to release him in the name of Aslan. And so now the children and Puddlegum are stuck. We just made this promise not to release this dark knight under any circumstances because he's dangerous and likely will kill us if he's released. But yet here's a sign that Aslan said that the prince will be known by the first person who tells us to do something in the name of Aslan. Here's the scene. "Oh, if we only knew," said Jill. "I think we do know," said Puddlegum. "Do you mean to think everything will come right if we do untie him?" said Scrub. "I don't know about that," said Puddlegum. "You see, Aslan didn't tell Pole what would happen. He only told her what to do. That fellow will be the death of us once he's up. I shouldn't wonder. But that doesn't let us off following the sign." In this moment, they're faced with two competing realities: to stay safe, to keep the Black Knight tied up and save their own lives, or to obey the signs of Aslan and release him because he is the true Prince of Narnia. But as Puddlegum mentions, there's no guarantees of outcome. That following Aslan doesn't guarantee their safety. And how often this is the case for us as well. That sometimes we want to live by faith if we can have our safety guaranteed. That I will follow God if my safety and security can be guaranteed. But this is not the promise that God has given us. As we look through the heroes of faith in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, yes, there are many heroes in faith who had these victorious moments that God showed up in a victorious way on their behalf, and they saved their life in grand, spectacular fashions. But at other times, people lived by faith and were still sawn in half, killed by the sword, live destitute and oppressed lives, and yet they still live by faith. And so living by faith doesn't guarantee a particular outcome, certainly in this life. That sometimes living by faith, even this life, still ends in tragedy from a human perspective. But as those heroes of faith did, they were looking for something greater beyond this life. And so yes, the ultimate outcome is good, but the particular outcome in this life may not be. And so at Pole and Scrub and Puddle Gum, that Black Knight very well may have killed them. But they had to live by faith. They had to trust Aslan that whatever comes, we're going to follow him. Will we do the same? We often want to know if this path will work, will provide the safety and security for our family that we desire. And sometimes God gives us that clarity, and sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he simply says, here's a sign. Here's what you need to do. Here's the next step. And I'm not going to give you a detailed map of how this is going to play out. I just need you to trust me. Will we obey even when the outcomes are uncertain? Even when it comes with the potential of a high personal cost for us? Because when we don't, we won't necessarily become bad men. We'll become hesitant, passive, weak, because we're not able to live by faith and offer our strength in a way that brings more life and goodness to the world around us, to offer our strength in such a way that our family is able to rest in our presence, because we're always playing it safe. When we play it safe for long enough, we start to forget who we are, and our family struggles to trust in us, to trust in our leadership, because we've lost the calling that God has given us. And so we're following our own fears and insecurities rather than following the call that God has given our life. When we can live boldly and follow that call, then they're able to rest in our vision. They're able to rest in our strength because we're simply following the path that God has laid out for us. Even when it's dangerous, even when it's uncertain, we are following the one who has called us. We're putting our trust in him. We're putting our faith in him. If something is stirring in you, pay attention. Often we don't need more clarity or instruction or direction. We simply need to be faithful with what has already been revealed, what has already been given. And so if God has given you that next step, the only question is, will you live by faith and take it?